This is your 8th program on accounting. It is about cash accounts. While you may usually think of cash as the paper currency and coins you have, you know that for a business, much of the money which is transferred is in the form of checks, money orders, or other kinds of drafts. All these things are called cash items and generally treated as cash by business. Thus, the amounts shown as cash on the balance sheet, as well as the positive balance shown by the cash account, are really the net totals of all these cash items. This usually includes the net balance in one or more checking accounts in one or more banks. You remember that since cash is an asset account, it is debited when it is increased and credited when cash is decreased. The debit total is always greater than the credit total unless there is no money in the bank account. Which are considered cash items? Yes. If your company had information about its other assets and its liabilities which was delayed or temporarily erroneous, it might be awkward, inefficient, and embarrassing. But if information about cash were wrong or delayed, the result might be critical or illegal. Obviously, timely and accurate records of cash are vital. The common and effective ways of reducing error and embezzlement involve some duplication and separation of the functions of handling cash and keeping records. One usual way is by a receipt or cash ticket, one copy of which is attached to the cash item until a bank account deposit slip like this one is prepared and checked, and another copy of which goes to the bookkeeper. How should cash items be handled? Right. An electronic or electromechanical cash register is used for large numbers of sales of relatively smaller sums. The tape provides a list of the receipts and often a code for the items sold. A copy is given to the customer and one is retained for accounting. Cash payments or disbursements by a firm are usually made by issuing a check on a bank account, but sometimes smaller or unusual disbursements are made in cash. Payments made by check are confirmed by the return of the canceled check, but cash payments should be confirmed and recorded by obtaining a receipt. There are two meanings for receipt. What are they? Yes. You would expect that a large part of the total number of business transactions involve cash items, so it would be quite helpful in reducing the number of posting entries to arrange a special procedure for accounting for cash. One way to do this is by using a special journal form which has a separate set of debit and credit amount columns from those used for the other accounts. This is called the 4-column journal. In this type of journal, as you can see, it is often possible to make the complete entry on only one line, which results in a more compact and convenient set of records. Entries which don't involve cash usually take 2 lines. What is the name of this accounting record which has separate places for the amount of cash and the other accounts? Right. Like other journals, the 4-column journal must be frequently proved. That is, the sums of debits and credits must be checked as being equal. Small penciled footings are entered after the last entry. Then the 2 debit columns are added together, and the 2 credit columns as shown. After proving, the totals are entered in full-size ink numbers with single lines above and double lines below them. Journals are also proved at the end of the month, and the cash balance carried forward to the new month, sometimes on a new page. When a new page is needed for the same month, the full journal page is proved and totals are entered on its bottom line, and on the top line of the next page, marked carried forward. Posting from the 4-column journal to the cash account is usually done only once each month, but posting from the general columns to the other accounts may be done at any time. When posted, the account number is noted in the posting reference column of the journal. Besides the entry itself, what posting note is made on the other account sheet in the ledgers? Yes. You can imagine that besides cash, there might be an account which in any given organization has so many entries that special debit and credit columns in the journal might be worthwhile. It might, in fact, be useful to have several special pairs of columns to save on entries into the ledger by periodically posting the balances instead of individual transactions. This sort of journal is often called a combined cash journal. On the other hand, it may be desirable to keep the cash receipts in an entirely separate journal called a cash receipts journal. This may be a separate cash payments or disbursements journal, too. Since most companies pay by check, such a cash disbursements journal is just a check register. What's the name of a cash journal combined with a general set and several special sets of columns? Yes. Don't forget such journals are original entry books, with assets increased by debits and liabilities and equity increased by credits. The journal entries in the general columns are each posted to the respective accounts in which the net totals of the cash and special columns are posted monthly. In each case, the date, the description, the amount, as well as the name and number of the account is shown, either by the special heading or individual notation. While nearly all of the transactions may be posted to accounts which are provided with special columns in the journal, there will always be a need for a general journal, either as a separate book or a separate pair of columns in a combined journal. How would you describe a journal? Yes. Cash should be proved frequently. Subtract the total of cash payments during a period from the total of cash receipts and the balance at the beginning of the period. This should be the total of cash on hand and on deposit. The deposit balance is usually available from check stubs or their equivalent, on which the amount of each check written is subtracted from, and each deposit added to the previous bank balance to show a new balance. The amount of cash and cash items on hand will, of course, be determined by a physical count and addition. What do you suppose you should do if there is an error in the cash account? Right. Like any account, the cash account may not prove on the first trial, and if there are a large number of cash transactions, this is not rare. But even if the amount is small, be quite careful in rechecking entries, for the error may be due to two or more much larger but nearly offsetting errors. If after a lengthy review the cause of the cash shortage or overage cannot be found, the books in some organizations may be balanced if approved by an entry to an account named Cash Short and Over. At the end of a selected accounting period, any balance in this account will then be treated as expense or revenue. It is a good idea to deposit all cash and cash item receipts and to write checks for all disbursements, even for small amounts of cash needed to be kept on hand. A special account called petty for trivial cash is often used for special small expenses where cash payments are simpler or necessary. Besides the petty cash account, what is another common special cash account? Yes. A petty cash fund is set up by cashing a check payable to cash for an established amount, $10 or $100 or whatever is the most needed. The money is placed in a cash drawer under the control of a designated person. Money is paid from petty cash only when authorized, and when a slip or voucher is drawn with the date, amount, employee involved, payee, and purpose are all noted, even if only by initials. These slips or vouchers are retained and listed in a petty cash record sheet or book. Such a petty cash disbursements book may, like a combination journal, be provided with several special and general or miscellaneous columns. Since few deposits are made, there may be no special debit column, but there is usually a single column for the amount of the cash disbursement, plus the other charge distribution columns. When the money is nearly all disbursed or at the end of the month, the petty cash account should be proved, and a check for the exact total of the disbursements during the written period to bring the cash total on hand back up to, say, the established $100 maximum. If the petty cash disbursements record has columns for distribution of charges, or if it's to be otherwise distributed to several accounts instead of just one expense account, the total petty cash charges to each of the accounts is transferred to the regular journal at the end of the month, along with the total of the cash disbursements chargeable to cash. Posting is not done to a cash record. What other records are there of petty cash disbursements? Of a secure, professional, and accurate agency for handling cash. Banks have savings accounts of various kinds, as well as checking accounts, but you will more often be concerned with checking accounts. An officer file a signature card with other identification and instructions and make a deposit. Cash items like checks, drafts, and money orders are accepted for deposit, subject to payments by their makers when sent through the banking system. A variety of designs, with the bank usually supplying the deposit tickets, and for small firms supplying the blank checks as well. The account number assigned by the bank, and the amounts of money and checks being deposited. Large numbers of coins being deposited should be in coin wrappers, and large amounts of currency should be arranged face up, small denominations on top. Checks should be in order as listed to save time. Checks may be identified by the assigned bank number rather than bank or drawer's name. Yes. Deposited to transfer title, guarantee payment, and provide record of receipt. While checks deposited or cashed by an individual should be manually signed, checks endorsed for deposit only by a company are often endorsed by a rubber stamp. Such an endorsement is called restrictive, since no part of it can be issued in cash, nor can it be transferred to a third party before clearing it. When a deposit is made in person at a bank, the teller will acknowledge it by an entry in a small company passbook, or merely by stamping and initialing a carbon copy of the original deposit ticket and returning it, or by a machine-printed slip. What would you call a check endorsement which includes for deposit only? Right. When a deposit is made by mail, the checks are restrictively endorsed, and usually at least an original and a copy of the deposit slip are enclosed in the envelope. Deposits at the bank during non-banking hours are handled in a similar way. Then the bank clerk initials the copy or prints a slip which may be mailed back to the depositor. About 90% of all payments are made by check. Blank checks are usually bound, numbered, and printed with a company's name, and contain spaces for the date, the payee's name, the amount to be paid, and the authorized signature. A check stub is usually attached for recording information which is retained in the checkbook or binder. Sometimes a carbon copy is made of the check or part of it.
Unless evident from the name of the payee, the purpose of the check may be noted on the stub and sometimes even on the check. To avoid check altering, be sure to use a check imprinting machine or write the amount in words, and don't leave any space between the $sign and the first digit. What immediate record is kept of a check? Yes. It's illegal to issue a check for more than the deposit balance, but sometimes it happens through error, and in this event the firm's bank may refuse to pay it, and the bank and the payee may advise the firm. Often the bank will pay the overdraft and advise your company by phone or mail. In either case, it is important to arrange for prompt payment. Sometimes checks received from others are not honored, that is, paid by their banks and returned to your bank where they are charged against your bank balance. In this case, deduct the amount from your checkbook stub and credit the cash account. Checks are processed faster today, partly because of the magnetic or optical character recognition equipment and procedure. This uses numbers which are assigned to the bank and to your firm's account printed at the bottom of the check. How would you describe a dishonored check? Right. A commercial bank not only accepts your deposits and pays your checks, but may also lend money or discount your firm's commercial paper, which is another form of lending. It also may collect for you the amounts of notes, drafts, and other commercial paper due you, or charges for drafts written against your account, in which case you're sent an advice of the credit to your account. Special services may also be provided, such as foreign letters of credit. It sends you a monthly statement showing checks, deposits, and balances. This statement should be reconciled with your cash accounts to find errors, if any. If any checks written have not been presented and paid, they're called outstanding. Some recent checks or deposits may, of course, be in transit or in the mail. Some small bank service charges may have been made by the bank, which must be entered into your accounts. But besides these, your company or the bank may have made a mistake, or a check may have been altered. This will show up in the checking procedure. What is it called? Yes. Sometimes the balance on the bank statement is in error because of the use of counter checks supplied by the bank for some special arrangement, or perhaps for interest charged when a loan is made, or for some other charge to the account. The canceled checks and charge slips returned with the statement will help find the discrepancy. Sometimes it helps to have a separate bank account for payroll checks. How do organizations feel about cash accounting?